Hello. It's tough sometimes to be a small property owner in our city. With the many laws and regulations that one must follow, and the many bills that must be paid, one tenant's failure to pay rent can be devastating. We'd like you to know that the Housing Court is here to help. And here's the story of how one landlord solved his problem.
This isn't happening.
I gotta go. What's wrong, hon?
What's wrong? What's always wrong? I have the mortgage and the fuel bills due on the apartment house, and I still haven't paid the plumber for the maintenance on the boiler from last month.
Are we that badly behind?
No, not any more than what's become usual for us. Look, Dave Nesbitt, the plumber, he knows I'm good for the money, but I don't think Con Edison or Chase Bank will be as forgiving.
Well, there's got to be something we can do between our checking account, perhaps borrow from our savings account.
No, I don't think we ought to do that just yet. Although, if Joe Mason would pay the 2 months back rent he owes, we wouldn't be...
That's 3 months. Tomorrow's rent day.
Right. That's $1,500. I've tried contacting him this month. All I get is his machine. He's never home.
You know, I think it's time we took him to court.
Great, that's what I'll do. I can't afford to pay the bills we've already got piled up, so you want me to go out and hire an attorney to take him to court. It'll probably cost us more to sue him than what he owes us.
Hi, hon.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. What's up?
Do you have a lot of homework?
No, we had an easy day. We took a tour of the courts. It was interesting. Here's some pamphlets. So what are you guys doing?
Well, your dad and I were just talking about the rent situation with the brownstone. Mr. Mason is late again with the rent, and this time it's 3 months.
Well, why don't you take him to housing court for not paying the rent?
Your mother and I were just discussing how we can't afford to hire an attorney to do that.
The clerk at housing court told us that you can do it yourself.
I wouldn't know where to begin.
She called it a summary proceeding. All you've got to do is ask Mr. Mason for the rent. And if he doesn't pay within 3 days of demanding it, you serve him with a notice of petition and a petition for non-payment of rent. But the forms you'd have to get yourself.
Sounds like you were really paying attention there.
It was pretty interesting. Besides, I know you guys are always complaining how Mr. Mason's holding you up for the rent. So I kind of paid a little more attention and asked some questions during the housing part of the tour.
Seems she's been paying attention to what goes on around here, too. Okay, Samantha, how am I supposed to demand the rent from Mr. Mason if I can never get him on the phone? And what did you call those forms, and where do I get them?
I guess you just go to Mr. Mason's apartment and ask for the rent. And the forms...
You know what? Excuse me, I think that I remember seeing legal forms at our stationery store. We can start there. Look, he's not paying the rent. What do we have to lose?
Okay. Tomorrow, first thing, I'll stop by the brownstone and ask him for the rent in person. If that doesn't work, then I'll stop by the stationery store, okay? Look, all I really want is the rent. I don't want to get tied up in court.
I know.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, who's there?
It's me, Tom Porter, the landlord.
Mr. Porter, how are you?
I've been trying to contact you all month, Mr. Mason.
Yeah, I got your message. Listen, I know I've been a little behind on my bills lately, but I will pay you what I owe soon.
Soon? Today November's rent is due, and I still haven't received September's or October's rent yet.
Wait a minute. You're saying I owe you 3 months' rent? I don't think it can be that much. Are you sure? Let me look in my checkbook.
Look all you want later. Believe me, you owe me 2 months back rent plus this month's rent.
All right. Well, look, I appreciate the time you've given me. If you can give me just a little more, I will pay you all that I owe.
Mr. Mason, I'm asking you for September's, October's, and November's rent, which totals $1,500. If not, in 3 days, I'm bringing an eviction proceeding against you in court.
All right. But look, with just a little more time, I'm sure we can fix this without having to resort to courts.
Well, you'll have the 3 days. Look, I understand that you have bills, but I'm sorry. So do I.
Mr. Porter is picking up the notice of petition and petition forms.
I guess I'm the petitioner. Yeah, I must be. It says the petitioner, who is the landlord, and that's me. This space is for the tenant's name, who is also called a respondent. And here I fill in the apartment's address, and on this line, the amount of monthly rent.
So how's it going, huh?
I don't know. On this form, I think I'm supposed to list just the rent. And on this form, I have to list the rent he owes in arrears broken down month by month.
Okay. So it looks like you've done all that. What's the problem?
It says I have to attach the written demand for the rent arrears to the petition. I didn't demand the rent in writing.
Relax. Why don't I go get the lease and we can see what's what? Okay?
I'm telling you, I can't do this by myself.
Okay.
Dad, the clerk at housing court told me that anybody can go down to the court and a court employee will help you. She said these court employees are called pro se attorneys and they give legal information.
I can't believe the court's going to help me, a property owner.
Pop, it's true. There are pro se attorneys there who can help you figure out how to file these things and do all the stuff you gotta do to get before a judge by yourself.
Well, Mr. Mason has a couple of more days to come up with the rent, and maybe he will, and that'll be the end of it. If not, I'll go over to the court, see what's what, and file these petitions, okay? Oh, the lease? Thank you. Excuse me, do you know where the pro se attorney's office is?
Yes, sir. First door on your right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, are you the pro se attorney?
Yes, how can I help you?
I have these forms. I wanted to know if I filled them out correctly. It's to start a non-payment proceeding against one of my tenants.
Okay.
What is it?
Oh, yeah. So, I see the notice of petition and the petition, and you're Mr.
Porter.
Ah.
Thomas Porter.
Mr. Abramowitz. Nice to meet you. Okay, is the name on the deed the same as the one listed here on as the petitioner?
Yes.
Okay, you'll want to bring the deed with you when you come to court. Now, I see you've broken down the rent on both pages, and you've listed the rent arrears monthly for all the months that are owed. So that looks good. Now, the tenant listed here actually lives in the apartment, isn't that right?
Yes. Why do you ask that?
Well, it's a little more complicated if it was a sublet or some other arrangement. Now, I see that the apartment's in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And you're bringing the case in the right court because the law requires you to sue in the county in which the property is located. So that's good.
I have a copy of the lease with me. I checked it. It doesn't say anything about me having to demand the rent arrears in writing, but I want to be sure.
Well, your petition says that you you demanded the rent from him orally 3 days ago. Is that right?
That's right.
If the lease required you to do it in writing, it's a little harder because if you don't write it exactly so, and if you don't serve it exactly the right way, the court could throw it out. But you don't have to worry.
How about after I file the notice of petition and petition, I'm wondering about serving him properly.
Well, the law says that tenant must be served either with these papers, either by a licensed process server, or someone other than yourself who hasn't served 5 process in the last year. Well, here's an information sheet that explains about service.
Well, that's simple.
Now, I noticed that the apartment building has 3 or more units. Do you have do you have a managing agent, registered agent?
Yes, I do. I use Mrs. Secord.
You must have a managing agent with a New York City address, and you must put her address down here. If your rental property has 3 or more units in it, you'll also need a certified multiple dwelling registration form. Do you have that form?
My wife gave me all the forms she thought I needed to file the petition. Is this it?
Yes, this is a certified copy. Keep the certified copy and bring it with you on your court date. Incidentally, you'll need to file 2 copies of the notice of petition and petition with the court clerk, so make sure you make enough copies for everybody, okay? I also suggest to landlords that they check to see whether their property is covered by rent stabilization or rent control. Have you checked to see whether it's covered by either one?
The apartment is neither.
Okay, that's good. Then since your apartment is not subject to rent control or stabilization guidelines, it makes this process a whole lot easier.
I finished putting in the managing agent's information. Am I ready to file?
Yes, I think you've gotten everything here. By the way, besides your deed, the lease, the multiple dwelling registration form, don't forget to bring your rent records with you when you come to court.
Okay. Do you think I'll be able to do this on my own?
You have everything you need to proceed.
What'll happen next?
Well, after the tenant is served with the court papers, he has 5 days to answer to the clerk. Then the court will let you know the date, the time, and the courtroom that you need to come to court. At that point, you'll be in what's called a resolution part.
What is a resolution part?
It's a part of the court where you and the tenant can sit down and try to work out the problem and resolve the case.
What do you mean?
Well, there's an attorney that works for the court, that works for the judge, that would sit down with both of you and try to work out some sort of agreement. The court attorney will even try to write up the agreement in what we call a stipulation. Then the judge will look over the agreement, make sure both of you understand it, and can and will live up to it.
Oh, you mean like agreeing to a payment plan or something like that?
Yes, if that's something you can live with.
And if we can't settle it in the resolution part?
Then the judge would set it out for trial, either that day or at a later date, and you and the tenant would have to come back to court. At that point, you'd be in what's called a trial part.
And if he doesn't even answer the petition in the first place?
Well, there's always a default judgment. If he fails to come to any of the proceedings, and if you haven't received the rent from him since the time you first served him with the demand, then you can ask the city marshal to evict him. Now, it sounds like you hope that he will pay his rent and you won't have to evict him. So if it comes to that point, why don't you come back to me for more assistance then?
He had trouble paying earlier this year. However, he did catch up, but we waited until the middle of the summer to get paid.
So this year's the first time he fell behind.
Yes, I don't know what the problem is with Mr. Mason. He used to be good at paying his rent.
Well, he may be having some financial problems. You should know that there are some government programs that might pay the back rent for some tenants under some emergency conditions. Your tenant can come and ask the court attorney about that when he comes to court.
Maybe you're right. Although I know he had a good job, at least he said he worked as a rep for a good company.
Well, anyway, I wanted you to know that there might be such a program available, just in case.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Abramowitz.
A pleasure. Don't forget, you need to file the notice of petition and petition with the landlord-tenant clerk and pay the filing fee.
Okay, thanks again. Excuse me, is this where I purchase an index number?
Yes, it is, sir.